Everybody, all right, we're back in the saddle again. All right, so this is going to be part 2. I've got a drive I've got to do. I'm going up to my Pine Needle location. Okay, the story about going up. Oh, whoa, I lost you. Hold on one moment. Hold on. Just move some of this stuff out of here. Okay, here we go. I think that'll be better anyway. Okay, so the story about I don't know. I think it was probably like the 10th day. Gosh, these flies. Ugh. It was like the 10th. Maybe it was the end. So we did the ceremonies all over northern Idaho, releasing the blood, the murders, and mostly, it starts with Native people, right? And then it ends with there were lots of skinheads and other types of organizations that were in Coeur d'Alene for quite a long time. And there was a lot of murder, hidden murders. And so we never trespassed to go and do the medicine work. We were always invited. And so people invited us to different lakes up there that they lived on. So we did a whole, 10 days of moving around the areas to clean the water and purify the water from the negative webbing, the negative causation webbing, into a new webbing that had intentional base for higher vibration, but we did not imprint it with exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to develop and grow from the people who live there and attended. And we also did erect a medicine wheel to actually also hold the vibration, kind of as a, like a acupuncture needles, so to speak, but long term, kind of a thing. So anyway, I think it was at the end of the 14 days of ceremony or something like that. I can't actually remember. But at the very end, I think it was at the end of the 14 days, because my teacher held a workshop, a 3-day workshop on his work, what his goals had been. He had been doing this stuff for 16 years on the road, and what we're dealing with, why water doesn't really like us anymore, and basically, medicine wheels and stuff, because I'd had a lot of experience in this stuff before I was able to help him and help train other people while we were doing the work. Anyway, so what happened was, the first day of the workshop, so we're at day 15. Mind you, when you're doing this type of ceremonial work and cleaning work, you're exhausted. So we were all exhausted. I was totally exhausted, but he needed to teach me something that I needed to learn. And he taught the whole group, but I was kind of the one that was not targeted, but I was the one that kind of was paying more attention in the work that was being done. So what happened was, on the second day, my teacher had lots of different types of crystals that he used that we would put onto the altar to help the water. And then when the ceremonies were done, we would wait, and then we would close down the altar, and then he would wrap and put his tools and medicines away. And he had a couple crystals that had a lot of power because they had been going to for 16 years they'd been on the road with him. And so they knew exactly how to work with him. Now, let me preface this with, when I was living in Taos, New Mexico, there was a Cherokee woman that showed up like a bat out of hell. And she did a reading for me. Not a reading or negative reading, but more like a medical one. And she had this pretty large pyramid stone that she would bring in and uncover. And then when you were told, you put your hands on it. Because a lot of times in this kind of work, we don't like to touch people directly. And we don't like to touch things without a glove or a feather. That's why a lot of feathers are used to kind of help clear, but touching, because we don't want to actually touch that energy because it gets on you like a sticky film. So I touched the stone, and then 20 minutes later she came back and she read it all. The stone actually was a type of stone that could read a lot of medical type information. So heart rate, and just like my organs and everything else that was going on. And she would read the medical information that was downloaded in the stone. And then she could give me, kind of like advice about maybe what kind of herbs and stuff I might take, or maybe where I should be with my mind, or old emotional patterns that might need to be cleared up, or just lots of different stuff, prayer work, a lot of it. So anyway, bottom line is that so you understand about stones, and especially when you work with certain types of particular stones, and each stone kind of has its own capacity. It's like they use crystals in computers, quartz crystals. I mean, it's like the same thing. It holds a lot of data and information that nothing else can actually hold, or some stones are receptive and some stones are they actually put out. Okay, so, and you can actually work with them, and once they can understand like your programming, and you can work together with programming them and then utilizing them for certain types of things, right? So anyway, bottom line is that so he had stones. So what happened was, on the second day, and these are like little shamanic events, and a lot of times they work for educating the students. This particular event was working on my emotional stuff, my imprinting, my emotional patterns and systems onto things or people, by face value. So basically what happened was, on the second day, he was having breakfast before he was coming to the workshop, and some guy who, you could say they're demonically possessed, they're after him, they're zombies, they're druggies, they are lower consciousness, maybe there is a spirit, even angelic, that could be helping them to do the things that they're doing to change events, right? So you never really know what's happening inside of people. Sometimes you just have to trust that the spirit world knows, God, whoever, the creator, whatever you want to talk about, your ancestors, whoever you think is involved, right? Could be Buddha, whoever you believe in, is working in the backside of this person that is doing things, causing things to happen for their own personal thing, and how it works in conjunction with other people. So this guy breaks the windows into the back of the truck, gets in there and just grabs what he can grab. Well, he ends up grabbing like one of the most powerful crystals, but it had a lot of sharp edges on it that my teacher has been using for 16 years in ceremonies, like this thing, no one touches these things but my teacher, okay? These are power objects. These are like atomic weapons of mass destruction if they kind of get into the wrong hands. I mean, because of the vibrational data and information and systems that are working, right? Causing webs of, positive or negative capture types of things. So the guy steals it. Well, he ends up going down this road and using that crystal to hammer and break windows open to steal computers, cell phones, whatever he could steal down this road on foot. Well, by the time he broke the glass on the first window, there was blood. This crystal had ripped this guy's hand off, right? So the crystal now is being used as a negative force weapon with a different intention. But that intention really probably couldn't overpower my teacher's intentions and how much medicine and all the information and data that stone had been collecting for 19 years from all over the globe, literally, in all these ceremonies, these power ceremonies that were eradicating darkness. And it's interesting that this guy would grab like the most, kind of powerful stone that, was in this collection of medicines, anyway. So he's breaking all these windows, and as he's breaking the windows and stealing the stuff in there, what happens is that more and more blood is just spraying out everywhere. There's like it's crazy, I know. There's like a blood trail, right? Well, at the end of it, he drops the stone, leaves it at the last crime scene, and then my teacher calls and talks to the law enforcement about the break-in. And because, he's so energetically different and he's native and this is kind of a white kind of area, they don't really like dealing with him. They're not really liking dealing with him and taking a lot of the information and the police report about the stolen crystals. And now they're finding the crystals at like 10 car break-ins, and there's blood everywhere. And so they take the crystal into evidence. I'm like so shook up. He shows up an hour and a half late, and he starts telling us the story, and I'm just like, oh my God, like, you just don't touch those kinds of things. You just the long-term effects of something like that would just be like crazy. And he looks at me and he said, you have some feelings about what I'm telling you? And I said, yeah, I'm just so sorry that's happened. And your medicines have been kind of contaminated. And he looks at me and he says, don't you put your shit on me. You don't put your emotional shit on me. You don't put your emotional shit on the situation. You don't, take your belief systems and imprint things with your emotional crap. I was like, wow. Shook up. But he was 100% right. And everybody else in the room there was like this, because, not that he was attacking me, he was helping me to learn how to look at situations in a neutral way before I decide what kind of emotional or mental impression that I'm going to put on to it, and see it, the whole thing. But in the end, he was right. He said, ultimately what this place needed was for that crystal, that energy weapon of intention, to be placed in the evidence lockers at the police department in Coeur d'Alene. he said because of the energetic corruptions and everything, them placing that crystal in there, he didn't want it back anyway, and it was evidence because it had blood on it. But he said that thing is going to work on them for as long as that thing is in there. And it has 16 years of, shifting dark causation webbing intentionally, and it's been all over the place. So I was like, wow, in the end, sometimes the spirit world knows what it's doing, and it needs someone who's in a negative web causation to actually act in order for things to, I call it a weapon, a new weapon, a new energy weapon to end up in the area that it needed to, and to just be like voot, 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 sending out signals. And it was a really good lesson for me to really be able to look at information and not get overly reactive about any of it, and waiting to see, maybe what the inner workings of it are, the webbing that is there, that is collecting, transmitting for, kind of behind the scenes. All right, that's the story.